Hello, I'm Dr. Brad Littlejohn, and I'm a professor at Davenant Hall. This fall, I'm going to be teaching a course called Natural Law and Scriptural Authority. Now, why do we need natural law, some might ask? There was a time when Christians would have answered that natural law helps provide common ground for reasoning with unbelievers over complex moral issues. But increasingly today, we find that people are just as unlikely to listen to an appeal to nature as they are an appeal to Scripture. How does telling them that natural law prohibits same-sex marriage get us anywhere? Well, for one thing, I would say that the purpose of natural law, according to Scripture itself, is to render man without excuse, to testify to fallen man's conscience, even if he wants to ignore it, that he is acting in a way that is contrary to God's created order. But more than that, I would say the value of natural law right now is probably greater within the church itself. We need to recover a strong doctrine of natural law to help Christians themselves understand the reasons for their own moral commitments, to give them confidence that they're not just doing something because the Bible said so, but rather because they are living in accord with the basic structure of reality, with what it means to be human as God created it. Furthermore, I would say that a recovery of natural law can help us to clarify the different kinds of moral obligations that we are under as Christians. Without a strong doctrine of natural law, it's easy to get confused about why, for instance, we don't continue to obey certain commands of the Old Testament that were given to the Jews. A doctrine of natural law helps us to actually sort through different categories of biblical commands and to understand which ones were binding for the believers in the Old Testament, which are binding for believers in the New Testament, always and everywhere the same, and which ones might be binding for believers in the New Testament, but in a way that is different depending on circumstances and context. Now, natural law is not about giving us all the answers. Rather, it's about growing in wisdom by learning to become attentive readers of the world that we find ourselves in. Now, some might say, okay, I understand that natural law maybe is a venerable Roman Catholic doctrine, but why should we as Protestants talk about natural law? Isn't that just a Catholic thing? Well, actually, that's a recent misconception. For much of the 20th century, Protestants turned their backs on natural law. But for the Reformers themselves, natural law was part and parcel of the basic small c Catholic heritage that they were carrying forward from centuries and centuries of Christian teaching. The Reformers had no problem making use of natural law in their interpretation of Scripture, their ethics, and their politics. Nor did they see natural law as in some way antithetical to their doctrine of Sola Scriptura. Sola Scriptura means that the Bible is the final authority for our faith. It doesn't mean that it's the only form of authority for any form of knowledge whatsoever. On the contrary, the Bible itself points us to the reality and truth of natural law, for instance in Romans 2:14 and 15. And it presupposes this idea of a natural moral order to which we have some kind of access throughout its teachings. Over and over, the Bible is appealing to this testimony of the created order. And it situates its teachings against that backdrop. Therefore, if we want to become good readers of the Word, we have to become good readers of the world. So I hope that you will join me this fall at Davenant Hall to study natural law and scriptural authority by looking at great texts by Thomas Aquinas, John Calvin, Richard Hooker, and more. You can sign up today at davenanthall.com.